Yeah. We worked really hard on that record in the rehearsals. Had a very strange rehearsal studio situation for that record. There was also a dilapidated I'm trying to crystallize this all to not be so windy. We were never sure when we were going to be done, or what, when there was going to be a next thing. There was always a member here or a member there that was like, well, I'm moving to Alaska to become a deep sea fisherman in 5 minutes, but we could finish the album before we do that. I do that. There was always something. And Don Cab 2, I knew I was 24 years old, and I knew I had it in my head that was the peak of someone's physical strength, and for whatever reason I put on horse blinders that like I've got to knock this one out of the park because I won't be physically strong enough to ever do this again when I'm 26. Maybe a crazy thing to think, but that's what I was thinking at the time. And I was also like, I also want to like completely tributize the shit out of like how much I loved the way Terry Bozzio played a drum kit full of rototoms. And so I put as many rototoms into my kit at that time for that reason as well. And as far you asked, did we push each other? I think so. Ian definitely pushed me because I was never like super stoked to play in time signatures, but I was willing to, and thankfully it all worked out amazingly. But it was a push for me, like a song like the last track on Don Cab 2, No One Gives a Hoot About Faux Ass Nonsense. That's a good example of a song that pushed me, I think. Because some of the time signs I would not have preferred. It wasn't my natural inclination, but they would come in, Mike and Ian would come in with these parts, and I would have to go, well, this isn't my natural inclination, but I'll find a way to make it, I'll find a way to spank it somehow and bring a baby into the world. And like that 5 drum part at the very end of No One Gives a Hoot About Faux Ass Nonsense couldn't have turned out better. It would not have been my natural choice to even attempt to play along to a guitar part in that type of 5 time sign. But I came up with the and then that became, a sequel, on even a record further down the line. So that was pushing me, Yeah. And I think I pushed them on, like if we're talking about the Don Cab 2 album, I think I pushed them on songs like Dick Suffers when the parts that really start to cook. You kind of realize you're in a bathtub with an electric eel here. I would, was probably from their standpoint, they probably had to realize, oh, he's really starting to cook now. We're going to have to get busy. We're going to have to get into this business here.
Yeah.
And I think I pushed them in ways on tracks like that.
You kind of just...
Let me think about, on Don Cab 2, we really rehearsed that album before a tape started to roll. And so I don't think there's natural improvisation. I mean, the end of like Stupid Puma, I mean, that take on the album is probably different than any other time we ever played it, just because there are passages in our compositions where you end up in this, you get like here's your free pass, you can play free for 15 bars and then you're back to the regimentation. So there's segments that were spontaneous, but for the most part, that Don Cab 2 was very rehearsed. The last track, again, Faux Ass, I had an old snare drum head on it that I thought sounded perfect, but Al, the recording engineer, didn't agree, and he asked me to put a brand new head on. And I couldn't make up any excuses because he had a new head right there and handed it to me. And so I put it on, and then every other track on that record is the new head. I don't think it sounds as good as the old head. You decide. I think the old head, you want to get one specimen on the whole album, the last track, I think the old head sounded better.